Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast. Proudly sponsored by Convergent Technology.
Hello, I'm Marc Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have the pleasure of Paul Fifiled, the CEO and founder of Sales Impact Academy, in the studio with me. Well, not actually in the studio, virtual studio today. How are we doing, Paul?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good, very good. Paul, I want to go straight into it, but first of all, I did want to talk about a bit about your background, because I was looking today at your LinkedIn profile, and I thought, this guy obviously had an idea that he wanted to go into maybe tech, because you started off doing a computer science degree. So take me back to when you sort of started and thinking about that degree. Was there a sort of conscious sort of thinking, I want to go into tech at that age?
I was actually I was down in a place called Salcombe in Devon. I'd already left university. I'd already dropped out of one degree, and I was just floating around. I was actually wanted to be a musician. Well, I wanted to be a rock star.
Right, okay.
And acting, but I was terrible at acting. So I just focused on the music. And I was just down in Devon, just like drifting along, and my mum came down with a bunch of like prospectuses for universities, and she said, "I really think you should go back to university, dear." And I'm like, "Oh, all right, mum." So she said, it almost forced me back into a degree, and this was in 1997. And she was like, "Darling, computers seem to be quite big. I think you should go into computers." And I was like, "All right." So that was it. I just
good advice from your mum then. Made a good decision. Because I was looking in your background, and I suddenly thought, right, this guy as well, you got a credit card, you borrowed £10,000 in order to start a business. Now, your mum can't have suggested that, surely.
Well, I mean, I asked her. Yeah, so she we put some editing equipment on her card, on her credit card. Yeah. In fact, she hated credit cards. That was it. She just one of those kind of like parents, just like debt is just scary. And she got an egg. Do you remember egg? I don't know if you remember like the
egg cards. Yeah. I had an egg loan. I had an egg loan and an egg card. So yeah, definitely remember those guys.
Yeah,
I remember I owed money for them for years.
Right. So did my mum. So we got her an egg card and put 10 grand on it and bought some equipment and started a production company.
So it's a very early young age to sort of do that. So what gave you the sort of courage to sort of think that's going to be successful? Because most people are thinking, I'll go and do a degree, computer science. Actually, maybe I'll go and get into a graduate scheme or apprenticeship or whatever it is. So what suddenly thought, actually, I'm going to start a company?
I don't know. I've always wanted to do it. I've always wanted to. I guess I've had the gene. We were really poor growing up, like mega on the breadline poor. It was tough. And I think possibly something in me was like, I just don't ever want this for my family when I get older. And I just felt the best way to do it was not to get a job, but actually create, like start a company. I actually didn't finish my computer science degree either. I found out in the third year that you could do, well, that they have like these year in industry programs.
A gap year.
And so kind of like a gap year, but it's where you go, you get a placement in industry.
Yeah.
And all the geeks in my computer science, course were like really excited about going to get a job at Microsoft, which back then was it wasn't cool. Microsoft's pretty cool now. And I was like, I just couldn't ever imagine just doing that. And I said to the lady who was doing all of the running the project, I was like, can you actually start a company in your year out, in your year in industry? And she said, yeah, no one ever asks, but yeah, you can do it. I'm like, great, I'll do that then. So that's what I did, and I never went back.
And tell me about that journey. So you obviously had you started that company, and then you actually formed another company later on. So bring me up to sort of date.
So in that year in industry, I started the world's worst digital agency, and we tried to build some stuff, but we were terrible. And the guys that I'd brought with me just couldn't really code. I thought they could. Then I got picked up randomly by this guy that ran one of the world's kind of like leading modeling agencies. They represented people like Claudia Schiffer and Naomi Campbell. Because long story short, I was doing some TV stuff. I had an agent, and I had a photographer, and one of the, this photographer guy that I'd met, we sort of started the world's worst web development agency with him. He sort of kind of seed funded it. So there we were in this photographic studio. That's where I met this guy that then ran this, elite modeling agency. And he said, I've got this idea. I want to put a website together. This is like 2000. The .com boom was in full flow. And he said, yeah, I want to create like a modeling fashion and modeling site. Can you put a web map together? And I had no idea what to do. I remember opening up Word 97, which obviously took ages. I literally just built this ridiculous web map, which is about modeling, fashion, stuff, and then some random just putting lines onto a bit of paper with this web map. Printed it off, gave it to him, and then about a week later he came back and said, "I've just raised £250,000 off the back of your amazing web map. Do you want to come and run this company?" And I was like, "Yeah, all right, because this one's shit." This one that I've created here is really shit. And then that was it. Off I went, and we raised a bit more money. We then built the world's worst fashion and modeling website. But anyway, that was the beginning of the journey.
One of the listeners would be interested very much about your journey, about how you'd raise money. So how do you go about, if you're a small startup, how do you go about raising money?
I mean, that's a very, very big topic. I mean, it does really help if you've got track record. There's no question about that. If you've got, I think actually a lot of it depends on what on your track record. If you've got some big wins in the bank, you can feasibly go and raise some seed capital on the back of an idea, right? Because you've got track record. Yeah, you can do that. For sure you can do that. But you need to have some big wins, right? Because people then bet on you as the entrepreneur to actually come up with something or execute an idea that they quite like. If you haven't got those wins, you really have to you've got to get something done, a prototype built, whatever it is, whether you're a consumer business or a B2B business. There's got to be something a bit more tangible before you can really access pre-seed money.
Okay. Now, when I knew you were coming on as a guest, Paul, I actually looked into your background because I thought, and it won't be popular with my trainer friends, because I do have a little quote that I always say to them, and they don't like it. And I am good friends with them, but I always say to them that, training, though I see it as those that can do, those that can't teach, those that can't teach PE. So I just see anyone in the training doesn't actually do anything. They're actually just training, because I see it as training's very difficult. Normally it isn't fun. No one really enjoys the training. And again, this isn't going to be popular. Most trainers I see are pretty dull. They don't deliver the training very well. So most of the listeners may be unaware, or certainly in the technology space, may not be familiar with your latest venture. Mm-hmm. So can you give us a bit of a background about how you come involved with SIA? Yeah,
sure. So then, I guess my first 10 years, I was learning a lot about how you build businesses and all this kind of stuff. And I ended up doing a bunch of stuff, and then pivoting into tech about 2010. I was working in a big agency, and we sold the agency to a private equity firm in India, and we spun out a bit of tech that we'd been developing called Seros. We got it funded in New York. I moved to New York, and we built a SaaS company, and that company today is doing great. We sold, private equity firm bought half of it for $100 million last year. Wow. I think that was just a gross undervalue. I think it's probably now worth about $600-700 million. It's doing about 50 million in ARR, and doing great. And then after that, I joined a business called Unidays when it was like a couple of million in revenue dollars. Took it to 40 in 3 years, built a 120 person team, all good. That business is really on fire. They're probably going to do 100 million this year. So they're probably heading towards a unicorn, right? So those two companies combined, you're probably talking maybe $1.5 billion in value, right? That I basically sort of was there at the beginning of both and sort of built the early infrastructure. And did more than just that at Unidays. I took it to quite a high level of revenue, which sounds great, right? But it was really stressful because I didn't really know what I was doing, frankly. I was learning on the job. I was hiring people who are clearly also learning on the job. And actually what I've now realized looking back is that it is absolutely insane that this profession, which, we call go-to-market, right? It's not just about sales. It's about the whole customer-facing function, from operations to customer success to the frontline sellers to sales engineering, pre-sales. Yeah. It's the whole thing, right? The whole machinery. It's a criminal, right? That the global education system has totally overlooked that as a major profession, because it is a major profession. And actually, it is the growth function of half the world's friggin' companies, right? Roughly speaking, half the world's GDP will be driven by B2B companies. And every B2B company has some kind of go-to-market function, right? Whether the leads come inbound and they convert them that way, whether they go out, it doesn't really matter. Whether it's a self-serve, there's going to be a function, there's going to be a team that is there in any B2B company in the world to create revenue. And it drives everything, right? I think, what's that famous kind of phrase? Nothing happens until you sell something. Yeah, right? Absolutely. It drives everything. It drives growth of companies. It drives employment. It drives on a macro level. It friggin' drives like GDP at a macro country level. So why the hell has the global education system totally overlooked it as a profession? And I kind of I flip it on its head sometimes when I'm talking to people and say, imagine this, right? Pick a profession. Law. Imagine if law works like this. You go to a university, you get a geography degree, you leave university, you rock up at a company or a law firm and go, right, I'm ready to practice law. Right? That would just be absurd. And the way you do that is you check some videos on YouTube just to work out how you do it. That is absurd. And if that actually happened in the law profession, it would be utter chaos. And that you learned law by doing it on the job, taking some cases, screwing it up, whatever, right? That's what happens in go-to-market and sales. And it's an absolute crime. So what we're trying to do is go, right, enough of that. Let's actually give the world what it really needs in the world of B2B, which is a true education platform to do what the universities have literally failed to do, and frankly can't do now, because the pace of the industry is so fast. They can't create curriculum in a dynamic way that can keep up with the pace of change and go to market. So they're now out the picture. They're not going to solve this problem. So what it needs to solve this problem is a completely different approach to creating curriculum, a completely different approach to delivering that curriculum, because we're delivering that curriculum into people who are stressed, who've got targets, who are in work, right? It's got, it's a very different pedagogy when you're teaching people who are already working to when you're teaching people who are in a non-work, pure student kind of environment. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to basically inject this high quality education and learning into the industry and help the millions of people that are out there that are stressed to hell, because we're also an industry where if you miss your goals, typically for a few months in a row, maybe a quarter, that's it. Dead, gone. You're unemployed. You can't put food on the table. You can't pay rent, and that's a horrible place to be as a human being, right? And so that's what we're trying to fix. We're trying to inject this high quality learning and education. We never call it training. To your point, most training's got this terrible connotations, and rightfully so. Most of it's the pedagogy is bad, the delivery is bad, the feedback loops around, have people learn properly is bad. We don't think as trainers, we're thinking as an education company. How do we create high quality live education materials that really has impact and helps people to really know how to do their jobs?
Why do you think there isn't the education on sales? Because I speak to most people, in fact, most companies I speak to, and if I ask them about what their playbook is or what their go-to-market strategy is, they haven't got a bloody clue, Paul. They haven't got a clue. And also, I recruit salespeople for the last 20 years. I put the person in, and most of the time, this is it. They get a laptop. They get speaking to the technical guy. They get HR, and then they get a set of accounts, and it's told to get on with it. And they are looking at the data from the last person, and they're calling up, and they're hoping that they can use their personality to overcome some objections about the last reservation why they don't want to use them. There is no training, especially in technology sales. I see it all over. There is no training. And if there is training, it's normally like this. Oh, actually, Joe Bloggs has been here a month. Can we put him on some spin training and just, like a tick box exercise? It's not actually for education. So why isn't a sales job in our industry, or in fact, ubiquitously throughout the world, why isn't it taken seriously?
Well, I think it's just been a colossal oversight by the global education system. And it has dramatically changed, but it used to be that if you didn't go to university, you go and get a job in sales.
Yeah, but that's everyone's thing, isn't it? If you can't get a job, go and get I fell into sales. Everyone falls into sales.
And that's like for stupid people. Now it's very, very different, actually, because a lot of particularly SDRs, as you know, come from graduates, and the reason that's happening is just pure economics. SDRs now can walk into a job at 40, 50 grand base, which is absolutely
ludicrous.
Mad. Ludicrous. So the economics have changed that. There used to be, oh my God, you've just got a 30 grand job at Deloitte. Wow. Now I've got a 50 grand job trying to create pipeline for a tech company. So you've now got a very different profile of people flooding into the industry, but the same problems exist. No one knows what they're doing. And here's the thing. That means, and again, going back to my example about law, and you could use it in finance, you could use it in the HR profession. Imagine if the burden of learning and education fell on the company for every single role. What would that look like? It would be insane. That's what's happened, right? So if let's play that through. So there's no education in the world. So companies would then actually have to go, okay, well, now we need to create learning internally for law. We need to create learning internally to train people on finance. We need to create learning internally. You go profession by profession. So in a way, I feel kind of a bit sorry for companies, because actually what's really happening here is that because the education system has failed us in such a gigantic way, that education burden for this profession has fallen now on the company. And the companies are not natural educators.
Yeah, no.
That's basically what's happened. And it means that the frontline managers, the enablement people, the whoever have to try and become educators, and not only hire these people on massive wages, but then actually be responsible for their skills development. And that is a ridiculous situation that's evolved. And like I say, that's the core problem that we're trying to solve.
And also as well, Paul, you mentioned there, you'll suddenly get a sales manager trying to train a newbie. The sales manager isn't trained to be able to train another person. And also as well, people learn in different ways, more visual, reading, etc. So how does sort of Sales Impact Academy account for sort of different varieties of people's learning capabilities?
Well, that is actually a really good question. And one of our customers actually is a company that actually does that, and they test people and they try and understand the different ways that is optimal for that person to learn. I think give us time on that front. I think step one is we've got to create this curriculum. And we are, we have about 350 hours of very, very high quality learning now, delivered by people who are in work, who are absolutely elite practitioners in what they do. We screen people to make sure that they are really good and engaging, educators. So you will not get bored in one of our classes. We've got a long way to go. We've got a long way to go. We've got probably another couple of years until we have a complete curriculum in every aspect of go-to-market. It is a massive topic. So really step one for us is now that curriculum, and it's probably going to be about 400 courses, we believe. And probably you're talking about, 3-ish to 3,500 hours of learning. That's what we've got to go and create with the world's best practitioners in every aspect of go-to-market. In parallel with that, we're building our own learning environment. We're calling it a virtual learning environment. We've got an amazing development team, an amazing tech leader in the business, and we're building, and we're going to push the boundaries of what you can do in live online instruction, live online learning, because everything we teach is live. We record it if you can't miss it, if you can't make it for whatever reason, but everything is completely live. So we're really thinking carefully about the actual learning experience as well. And we have amazing results. One company recently saw 30% increase in top of funnel because we actually were able to educate their SDRs on best practice around using LinkedIn and Sales Navigator and cold calling and building sequences and building, really, really effective outbound emails and all of that kind of stuff. All that best practice is out there in the world. Some of it is locked into some of these brilliant people's heads and not on the internet, and some of it's kind of on the internet, and we're just bringing all that under one roof.
Now, I hear a lot of people raving about your courses, which is great. And in fact, Mark Reddy in my office, when he knew you were coming on, said, I've actually been on one of your live sessions. And I was like, okay, well, I've got Paul coming on. And he said he was on the live session with Sir Clive Woodward. And I was like, right. And he goes, I actually got to ask him a couple of questions. And I was thinking, how do you do that? How do you get that level of guest or trainer, whatever you want to call him, onto your sessions? How are you going about doing that? Because he came out and said, oh, you're going to really enjoy this podcast because I did an actual session and it was actually fantastic, and he was a big ambassador about it.
Nice. Well, it's great to hear. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
In my office an hour before I came on, Paul was like, oh, great session. I was like, really? Yeah,
nice.
So yeah, good,
nice.
Good PR.
That's great. Well, it's great to hear. That was through network. Interesting thing, when we first started, so we began this only in October 2019 as a live online only teaching product, not knowing what was about to happen to the world. We raised a bit of pre-seed money, only about £300,000 in about March 2020. And then obviously things just went, crazy from April onwards. And we were like, it just feels wrong right now when the world feels in this kind of turmoil. No one knew what was going to happen. It felt a bit scary. It kind of had echoes of 2008 financial crisis. In fact, everyone really just took out that playbook, right, from the drawer. It was like, let's just get out the 2008 financial crisis playbook and basically lay everybody off. Which turned out to be pretty much the wrong thing to do for most of tech that wasn't exposed to, I guess, like travel and hospitality. But what we decided to do was the core mission of what we're trying to do here is, we're really just trying to help people, right? Help them, give them agency, give them confidence, and all the things that come with good education. Help people who are really struggling, who are really stressed, who are really worried about their jobs, right? That's most people in go-to-market. And that's the core. There's a core purpose and a core mission, right? To help humans. And so we felt like, well, in keeping with that purpose and mission, why don't we just open the academy for free for all these people that are being laid off, for all these people that are being furloughed? why don't we not only do that, but we kicked off a program. We got Outreach to sponsor it, called In This Together. And through 6 months, the first 6 months of the pandemic, we did a live masterclass with an amazing speaker Monday to Thursday every single week. It was nuts. We essentially turned the business into a sort of a live webcasting events company, right? There's about 5 of us in the company. And we were like, just give without expecting anything in return. It was like one of the biggest examples of effective giving and giving and giving without expecting anything in return as a sort of, marketing strategy, if you like. Although it wasn't, we never did it as a marketing strategy. And then wonderful things start to happen when you do the right thing for people, right? And you put out a lot of goodness into the world. And so we were meeting, and it was, I promise you, when you've got a daily masterclass to fill, right? It's pretty full on, right? You book enough people for the next 2 weeks, and you literally take a breather for about 2 days, and then you're getting stressed because of like that next week is coming, and then the next week is coming, and it was wild. But unintended consequences of doing good, unintended consequences of doing the right thing was that our network just grew and grew and grew because we were milking the network, asking people who they knew that were great at certain aspects of go-to-market. And one person we talked to was like, I used to work with Clive Woodward. I was like, oh, wow, he'd be awesome. Like, would you mind asking him? This is what we're doing. It's all for free. No one's getting paid. We're doing this to help the industry, to help everyone through this pandemic.
Yeah.
And he said yes. And then he came on, did a brilliant session. I got to know him a bit. And then I was like, and then I said to his manager, I was like, hey, do you think Clive might be up for even teaching a course? We could put it together, and we've developed our own pedagogy and our own approach to building learning. So we'd have to work with Clive on that as well. And he said yes, and we're running that course, Dear Never Champion, now for, I think it's had about 7 runs now. And for Clive, it's been brilliant because he now sells that course to large corporates, and we're actually on a rev share with him. So he actually sells that individual course to live corporates, and then literally does it from his garden shed. So it actually opened up a whole new way of teaching and a whole new business line for him as well.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of the Channel Chat podcast. And now a few words from our sponsor.
Channel Chat is brought to you by Convergent Technology. The Convergent team is made up of experienced and innovative IT professionals. Our mission is to disrupt the traditional reseller market, and we want the most aspirational salespeople to join our team as part of our journey. We know IT sales has a bad rep, so we've created a rewarding culture with the best remuneration and career progression in the industry. Check out convergenttechnology.com for more info.
It was funny because I think in that period, a lot of people wanted to do the right thing. I remember I asked Stephen Bartlett on the Dragon's Den. Stephen Bartlett, who sold Social Chain, he came on the Channel Chat show about educating the channel about marketing and social media. And he did it from New York, and it was fantastic, and it was really, really good. And we got so much from the listeners from that. So I think it was a real period of actual people sharing. Talk to me about that journey then, because you obviously had the idea in, was it October 19, and you didn't obviously predict the pandemic, but your platform would have been very relevant then. So tell me about that journey from then to now, and how many staff you've done and where you are now.
Yeah, so we started in, I sort of say to people, it was a very, very, very inexpensive business to start, wildly expensive to scale, business to scale.
Burning money now.
So we started with 3 or 4 courses. I taught, Alex, my co-founder, taught. It was really aimed at startups. I did a go-to-market course. Alex did a course to help SDRs know how to do their job. Pandemic hit, we did that. But what actually happens is it put us on the map. And so when we put the paywall back up in about June, July, people knew us and they loved us. The brand had we'd got out there. I mean, I used to do this wrap-up show with Tom over at Outreach, Tom Castley over at Outreach, who runs Outreach for Europe. and we just had we just did this thing called The Week That Was, and we had this stupid graphic come in. I used to play like guitar and do like these little jingles at the beginning, and he'd always hate the jingles and just go boo, and we'd talk about all these amazing masterclasses that we'd done. We literally created like a LinkedIn like TV show.
Brilliant, yeah.
Really stupid, and I scripted them all, really carefully, and we just took the piss out of ourselves, and it was good fun. People still even talk about that today. So we really created a lot of goodwill, and so when we said like, right, we're now going to get back to building the core education platform, our revenue just sort of took off, and so we hit $1 million in ARR within the first year. So up to end of January. We then launched a global partnership with the Revenue Collective, which then since has become Pavilion. That then put us even more on the map. We then got on the radar of Stage 2 Capital out of Boston, so Marc Sumner's fund, and they then invested because the fit with their LP network was so strong, because the way that the Stage 2 Capital works is that the investors in the fund are all go-to-market leaders from the biggest tech companies in the world, and it's like an insane like go-to-market mafia, and from that point it's just gone absolutely bananas, and so we've grown 400% from last January. So we're now about 5 million ARR from in 12 months. We just signed PayPal on Monday. HubSpot's a customer.
Wow.
Shopify's a customer. G2, Gong. We have over 220 customers now, 8,500 learners, 10,000 people in our community. We did another big convertible loan note just before Christmas. HubSpot's now an investor, and I think now that we're 110 employees now. Up from 22 this time last year. Most of the business is now in the US. I work US hours, so right now for me it's 8:30 in the morning. I think for you it's 12, isn't it? Half 12?
Half one,
yeah. We got half the team in the US. I've just hired an amazing CRO who currently works at Snowflake. I've got an advisory board to dream of, senior people from like Workday, LinkedIn, Toast, etc. And I think we're on track to build probably one of the biggest edtech companies in the world.
Fantastic. Would you say, you mentioned earlier in the show, getting investment, you need a proven track record. Now you've recently got investment. Do you think the fund would have been interested in Sales Impact Academy if you personally hadn't had that proven track record of success before and you'd done it?
I think it might have been harder. And just to qualify, obviously you can go and raise money without track record. You just have to get a bit further than just an idea.
Yeah.
Is what I said, is what I meant. It helped that I was a 2-time CRO.
Yeah.
And I got some track record and some success. So I think that definitely helped raising that pre-seed money. Yeah.
So the listeners will be interested in the growth you've had. Obviously, congratulations on the growth in the last year, let alone what you've done before. But let's talk about going from 22 staff to 100 and 110, because you're a seriously different company then. So there must be some serious challenges you've encountered, even just hiring those sort of amounts of people during a pandemic. So how different is the company now from 22 to 110, and how have you found hiring in that sort of period?
Well, one of the things I'm most proud of is that we've built a pretty special culture at SIA. I've been a part of some terrible toxic cultures, like the company before this one, at uni days. You just have to do a few searches to kind of like see what it was like there under the guy that runs it. I can't really go into sort of details, but if you just do some very, very simple
listeners will find out now themselves. They'll go and
internet searches, you can see. So I think it was quite good that I wasn't a CEO for the last 10 years. I was an exec reporting into a CEO. So I know what it's like, being, reporting into a CEO. So I've been incredibly thoughtful and careful about, me now being a CEO based on that perspective that I've had. And I really think that, look, I'm sure you can be a great CEO without being an exec before, but I think you really have deep empathy if you have been an exec in fast-growing tech companies and understand what it's like to build the dynamics with your other execs and all this kind of stuff. But if you go to our Glassdoor, we've got 27 odd reviews, 5 stars. We've got 100% refer a friend. We've got 100% of people at the moment, thankfully, fingers crossed, that think I'm doing a good job. We have a highly engaged team. For example, I'll give you an example of a policy change that I made that I think is just ethically and morally wrong, is that whenever anyone starts with us, they get guaranteed 2 months safety net. So this whole notion of probation period, I think, is just wrong. It's just it's pretty disgraceful. Because what the company's basically saying is, hey, come join our company. It'd be great. Really can't wait for you to join. But just in case you've made a mistake with the hiring, we want this ability just to fire your ass with 2 weeks notice for the first 6 months. Is that all right? Come join. What that is?
Time, Paul. Everyone does that though, don't they? That's the thing.
But it's wrong.
Come here. If you do a good job, we'll keep you. If you're rubbish, we're getting rid of you.
Yeah, but
it happens all the time.
But that puts everything on the employee.
It does, yeah.
Nothing on the company. And the employer, we all live hand to mouth. I've been living hand to mouth up until a few years back, right? You just do. And it's just not, and so companies then say like, oh yeah, we're a really psychologically safe environment. Yeah, we really care about our people. And it's like, well, do you have a probation policy? Like, yeah. And it's like, well, then you're a liar. You're a liar. You just lied. Literally, the words that come out of your mouth are lies. Because you don't create psychological safety. Because the sword of Damocles is hanging over every single new hire that you make. So you're a liar. You're a corporate liar. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to fall into that trap. So we don't. So we have a 2 month safety net for anyone starting. So people are like, and also you want people to be free to express their views and opinions. You don't want people arriving and then just be a sort of, scared gibbering wreck, somewhere in their being. And you want to keep your mouth shut and keep your head down and just make sure you do a good job. In those early days of every new hire, they're coming in and seeing things that you've done that maybe aren't great. And that's the perfect time for them to see this and go, why do you do it like this? Because actually I've been thinking like there could be a better way. You want to encourage that. But with that probation policy, you risk not getting those insights.
Do you think probation should be abolished in all companies then?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Like the company is a strong financial entity. The individual is not. It's just not fair. It's just wrong. It's morally wrong. And also the other stupid thing is how many companies, and obviously you're in this space, how many times out of 100 people would you let someone go in that first 6 months?
Oh God, a lot.
You think a lot?
There's a lot. There's salespeople. A lot of them don't pass their probation. There's a high turnover in tech. A lot.
Okay. What about other roles in a company?
Other roles? No. Yes. No. It's very small. Very small. Probably. I ain't got the data. I'd probably say 10 or 15% aren't passing probation.
I'd say maybe even less than that.
Maybe 5, 10. I don't know. It was
5
funny. Sorry, go on.
There you go.
I was going to say in tech, it was funny when I look at salespeople, and it goes back to what you said about not teaching them. We get a lot of people join companies that don't pass their probation. I would almost go as far as to say 35%. Don't pass their probation for the first 6 months. And again, it's not going to be popular what I'm going to say because there's lots of people listening to this, but it is on the company, and it comes down to induction. The induction's poor. There's no sales playbook. There's not a mentor. There's not a budding system. They're left alone. They're told to do a number of a GP target or a revenue target or appointments because they're an SDR. And by month 3, if they're not doing it, pressure comes on. Month 4, they're out. Yeah. And it happens again and again and again and again. And I hear this a lot. I hear this all the time because as a recruiter, when I'm going through the recruitment process with them, I actually say to them, we're trying to do as much due diligence as we can for you. We're going to get a reference. I believe past performance is a good indicator of future performance. We've done all the checks to get them to the hiring table. When you believe they're a good hire, and so do I, they join the company. And then I do check-ins regularly. I say, you do know that the induction was pathetic. You do know that the laptop wasn't even on their desk. You do know that they've been left for 4 days and they haven't even know what the customer engagement is. They have no idea. And they're sort of like, oh, well, Mark, we're trying to do this. I said, I'm not having a go. I'm just telling you, because what's going to happen is they're going to leave. And I haven't got the stats, Paul, but you're almost making me think I should go and do some research here, because I would say it's 30% of hires aren't they're either leaving or they're getting sacked because it's due to either training, poor induction, or the ramping period is pathetic.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to education, on both sides. Education in how you build a proper sales function. So that's a sales leadership problem, and education on the rep side, on also skill wise how you do the job.
Yeah,
but this is a symptom of the complete absence of education in go-to-market. That's the symptom.
No, absolutely.
This revolving door, and it's not nice. It's horrible. It's just it's horrible.
It's not a good experience for either company, is it? The company doesn't benefit, and
no one wins.
Certain doesn't benefit.
It's literally lose.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're interviewing, Paul, how does a candidate impress you, and what do you look for?
I love, I remember one of the best interviews I ever did was with someone not in sales actually, but it was into our education team, and she'd never done an interview before, so we were her first interviews. So she'd just come out of college, and it was one of the most impressive interviews I'd ever done, because she did such deep research on me. I knew that this was a curious, intelligent, diligent person, and then the person that I was, and also she was also a lovely person. You can just tell her personality was just great, and it was so impressive. She was asking me questions around podcasts or interviews that I'd done from a decade ago, and you can tell she'd listened to the entire thing and knew exactly what I was talking about, and was asking intelligent, contextual questions, and it was mind blowing. It was actually kind of it was just incredible. So that whole research, it just said so many things. It was like diligence. She was she clearly huge amounts of curiosity, and it was just deeply impressive.
Yeah, because I actually I'm going to echo what you said there, because I say to people all the time, link your research to the questions you're asking, and also as well the curiosity to challenge the CEO, the owner. People like being challenged, if you're about your company. So no, good answer. If you were going to give any advice to sort of an ambitious person that was going to try and join your organization, who maybe wanted your job, who wants to be a CRO, how would you sort of manage their expectations? Because especially in your growth phase, there is going to be opportunities, but maybe they're actually trying to sort of maybe run too faster than faster than they can. How do you manage that?
I think it's a good question, in that there can be a temptation to promote people quickly.
Yeah.
There is I think you just got to be very thoughtful about it, because you want them to succeed in the long run, and for them maybe to succeed in the long run, you've just got to not put them into a role too soon where they're almost almost inevitably gonna fail. So you need to pace it, and sometimes you're just going to get it wrong, and sometimes it's a hard one to get right, but it's important that you are thoughtful about making sure this person can do the next step up. But again, like, honestly, it all comes down to me to like a lot of it comes down to education. Yeah. So many people get promoted into a new role and they've got no support or development in how you do that new role. So many people, I mean, we've got some great curriculum now around first-time managers. So many people end up suddenly managing a team. Yeah. And they left university 6 months before. They've got no development around how you manage people. Zero, zilch, none. And so a lot of it, like I say, a lot of it does, I think, still comes right back down to what we're doing, which is like education.
Because Paul, even the top jobs in our industry, there isn't training around to be a CEO or CEO. So, I see it a lot. The sales director's done a great job. They've been there a few years, etc. The top job goes, we'll put Jane Bloggs or Joe Bloggs into the role. They're the CEO. Maybe they've run a P&L, whatever, but they haven't managed that capacity of people. They've managed salespeople, but they certainly haven't managed finance and HR. What training is out there for somebody who wants to be a CEO? Because I don't know any training. I don't know any person that's been trained to be a CEO.
Nope. And that creates chaos as well. So we do have a plan to create a startup school. There's a whole curriculum around, earlier stage. Excuse me. But within that curriculum, I totally agree. In fact, I think that it would be good one day if a little bit like when you get do your driving test, right? You don't just get given a driving license. You have to go and do an exam and you have to take a test. I almost think that should happen with CEOs because they have the biggest, most gigantic influence on a company. I sort of, there's this kind of slightly arbitrary, but essentially if you think about an org structure, maybe your frontline people have got a 1x impact on the culture and the mood of the company. Maybe the managers, team leads have got 5x. The directors level's got 10x. The VP level's got 20x. The C level's got 50x. The co-founder's got 100x. The CEO's got 1000x. Impact on the organization, on the mood, on the culture, on the direction. It is huge, the impact of the CEO. So if you've got a rotten one, and there are a lot of rotten ones out there, it can be very difficult for employees. It can really screw people up. If you've got a bad CEO, it really can for years. It can create psychological damage for years and years and years. If you've got a horrendous bullying, I feel psychologically damaged still from my time at uni days because that guy was such a horrendous man. And so, I do think it would be great if one day you have to qualify to become a CEO. I don't think we'll ever see that day, but I think it would be kind of interesting.
Well, hopefully, but I do think there certainly should be education around it because I see a lot of, I'm not going to name names, but there's lots of people in the IT channel that I see running companies that I think you're not fit for purpose, and not just from a revenue point of view. I see it as their responsibility to look after the people. These are people's jobs here. These are people's their lives, and you're in care of them, of their financial responsibility. So there should be some due diligence around that. So I 100% agree. One of the last,
but like you said, I think we can solve that with just good education.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you give to people that, and I get a lot of this asked a lot of times to ask CEOs when I speak to them or founders, what advice would you give to people that for whatever reason have had a number of jobs in a relatively small period of time? They really struggle to get jobs. It's almost like, red flag. We don't want the job hoppers, Paul. they struggle to get in front of people. There might be some genuine reasons. What advice would you give to those sort of people trying to get back into work now? Would you take on someone that had been like had 2 or 3 jobs in the last in this pandemic, for instance?
Look, the problem is, obviously that it's a hard one. This one's a hard one. It doesn't look good. Stop bloody job hopping is what I'd say.
Yes, yeah, you've heard it, channel. Just stop. If in doubt, don't start moving. So no, fair enough. It is a challenge because I'm hearing a lot every time we speak to a company, Paul. They one of the things they say to us, no job hoppers, and what that means if someone's had more than 1 job or 2 jobs in the last year, 18 months, they just don't want to know, which I do get because there's a training period again, coming back to your education. But there's a lot of people out there still struggling to get into the market, even though there is a talent shortage, because of that reason. Their CV just can't get through the door.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, it is a filter. It is a filter because, obviously for companies, you don't want to invest in someone who's just flighty.
No, absolutely.
I mean, that's obviously the logic behind it. If that's the case, then you just got to be probably a little bit different in your strategy of how you get work. And it's got to be, you're probably going to, if you really want like the right job and you've got that kind of CV, it's maybe it's referral. It's like getting a referral into a company from someone that's already there is probably a good route to try. Like think about your friends, then their networks, the companies that they work for, and if they get a good internal reference, that's probably a route.
That's good advice, actually, using a personal friend or personal reference, because especially using an agency like ourselves, we're charged to screen out candidates, and when the company says don't send me job offers, it is quite challenging to get through that. My last question for you, Paul. You have picked trainers. You obviously got trainers, influential people in your network, but who has been the most influential in your career? Who have you learned from, and who have you been trained for? Name your top 2. If anyone, Paul, have you learned from yourself?
I think here's the top 1 or 2 people. I think so much of what I picked up has just been, self-taught. There are lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people I like massively respect. A guy called Pete Crosby, he's he teaches he teaches Definitive Guide to Revenue Leadership at Sales Impact Academy. He's just an incredible guy. Marc Roberge, he's just incredible too. He's now on my board, which is pretty amazing. He probably wrote the best book on sales in the world called The Sales Acceleration Formula. And then, he's a professor now at Harvard Business School. He was a bit of a hero of mine growing up. Hero of mine, like in my role as a CRO. What's magical is that these people are, investors and teaching on the platform today. So I'd say like Mark and Pete really rate so highly, for sure. But really, there are so many that I just deeply respect, and a lot of them are teaching on our platform. So,
Paul, you've been a great guest. Thanks so much for your time. If people want to find out more about SIA or get in touch with yourself, how can they do that?
Probably LinkedIn's the best way. And my email's paul@salesimpact.io. Contact us through the website. Check us out on LinkedIn. Yeah, all the usual places.
Paul, you've been a great guest. Thanks so much for your time.
Cool. All right. Cheers. Thanks, mate.